Hello and welcome to this video on how to conduct a paired samples t-test. So a paired samples t-test is a statistical test that allows us to determine if there is a difference between two time points from the same group of people. So we could ask a research question that maybe we're interested in looking at the effect of caffeine on exercise time trial performance, and we have our group of participants, we have them complete the time trial on a placebo, and then we have them conduct that same time trial on a different day but following caffeine. A paired samples t-test would then be the appropriate test to use. And just like the independent samples t-test, the paired samples t-test, the results of the test are determined by the p-value. So our p-value, to determine if our test is different, would be less than 0.05, and this is listed as our alpha value. So again, when we're deciding which test to do, I always recommend looking at the decision tree. So a paired samples t-test is looking for differences between groups. Now we're going to assume, for the purposes of this video, that we've got parametric data. So we then come down to our next row of our table that states that we've got the same participants but different numbers or different time points of occasions. And because we've got two groups, let's assume caffeine and a placebo, we follow it down. Here's our two groups, and that results in our paired samples t-test. So you could use this for pre or post, or for comparing conditions, as I've already said. Now when we do an SPSS t-test, this is the output that we get, and it's important to only focus on two of the boxes that the SPSS output gives us. Now the first one is titled Paired Sample Statistics, and in this example we see that we've got our mean and our standard deviation for our data set. The n represents the number of people that are within each condition. So this is the key data within this first table. Do not be confused by this second table. Even though it's got a sig value, this table is not needed. The one that's really important to us is the third table down, and this is titled Paired Samples Test, and you need to look over the right hand side of the table. The values that are interest of us are our t value, the degrees of freedom, and the sig two-tailed. The sig two-tailed value is our p value, and remember that our alpha threshold that we set is a test is statistically significantly different if it is lower than 0.05. So when you report the results of your t-test, these are the values that you would report. Now I provide up here on the top right hand corner of the slide in italics the buttons that you would click to run through a paired samples t-test, but I'll just give you a demonstration in a moment of what that looks like. So here we are now in SPSS, ready for the mini demonstration on how to do a paired samples t-test. So what you see on the screen here is quite a large data set, but what I'm going to focus on is just how we go about doing the paired samples t-test. So to do that, we again click Analyze, and then you come down to Compare Means, and then Paired Samples t-test. Clicking on this will bring up a brand new window, and you'll see that we've got variable 1 and variable 2. So we need to transfer over the variables that are of interest to us. So we're going to look at flexibility score as our first variable, and we're going to look at flexibility in year 2. Now remember, a paired samples t-test is of interest when we've got the same people but being tested under either different conditions or different time points. So the time points here is in their first year and then their second year. Conditions could be under, for example, caffeine and a placebo. But we've got our time points, so that's fine. And once you transferred them over, very simply, just check that estimated effect sizes are still ticked, and then click OK. That should bring up a new window after it's processed, and we end up with our t-test results. So remember, the first test, or the first box of interest, is his paired sample statistics, and we've got our mean, our number of people in the test, and our standard deviation. We don't need to focus on this pairs sample correlations, so the next one down is our paired samples box that we're interested in, and we need to look at the right hand side of the box. And here we see our t-value, df, which stands for degrees of freedom, and our sig two-tailed value. So we can interpret from this test that there is a difference in flexibility between year 1 and year 2 because our p-value is less than 0.05. So we have a statistically significant difference.